Recording in progress.
Okay, I've started the recorder, so we will have it to go on our thing. And I've sent Karen an invite, so she should be joining us any moment now. Okay, we got all the way up to chapter 15, verse 25. So could I get someone who would read 25 through 31 for me?
Are we on chapter 17?
No, chapter 15.
15?
Yeah, we're still finishing up 15, and we'll get 15 and 16 done today. And then we are going to be gone next week. And the week after that, we are going to do 17 and 18. And I think you got the questions already for both those chapters, correct?
Yes.
And then, which I have a whole week, I will try to get you 2 or 3 more chapters out to you. So we'll have our notes well in advance. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
If you go to our chapters 14 to 16, we're on question number 8.
Question. Okay, I found it.
Okay, so that's where we left off last week. Right. And you want chapter 15, what verses?
I want to start with verse 25 and go down just to 31, but include 31 if you would for us, Lori.
Okay. This is the New Living Bible translation. Nadab, the son of Jeroboam, began to rule over Israel in the second year of King Asa's reign in Judah. He reigned in Israel 2 years, but he did what was evil in the Lord's sight and followed the example of his father, continuing the sins that Jeroboam had led Israel to commit. Then Baasha, son of Ahijah, of the tribe of Issachar, plotted against Nadab and assassinated him while he and the Israelite army were laying siege to the Philistine town of Gibbethon. Baasha killed Nadab in the 3rd year of King Asa's reign in Judah, and he became the next king of Israel. He immediately slaughtered all of the descendants of King Jeroboam, so not one of the royal family members were left, just as the Lord had promised concerning Jeroboam by the prophet Ahijah from Shiloh. This was done because Jeroboam had provoked the anger of the Lord, the God of Israel, by the sins he had committed and the sins he had led Israel to commit. The rest of the events in Nadab's reign and everything he did are recorded in the book of the history of the kings of Israel.
Okay. So we have Nabal, and he comes on the scene. We started talking last week about King, goodness, Rodney, what is with your brain? King Asa and his reign in Judah. And he reigned, King Asa reigns for 40 or 45 years, something like that. And 2/3 of his time, he was a very, very good king, and he relied on the Lord a lot, and did a lot of good things. The last third of his reign, he wasn't a bad king, but he made a lot of mistakes. And we talked quite a bit about that last week, if I remember correctly. But don't count on my memory today. It's not doing real good. So anyway, to get back to what happened to my verse. I love it when my computer just decides I'm done with that verse and wants to move me to another one. So anyway, so we've got this Nabob character, and we don't learn a lot from First Kings about Nabob. You will learn more if you go to Chronicles and you read Chronicles. Chronicles has quite a bit about him. And also, if you go onto one of your computers and look up the book called The Kings of Israel, and that's the title of the book. That book did not make it into the Bible because what the authors of the Bible did is they took the Kings of Israel and the book called The Kings of Judah and bled them together and called it First Kings, First and Second Kings. They tried to combine them. The problem is when they combined them, they dropped a lot of information, especially on the kings out of Israel, because there was a lot more information about them, but we don't learn a lot because of how that was done, unfortunately. So anyway, so back, I finally got my computer to turn back on. So Nadab, which was the son of Jeroboam, he begins to rule, and in the second year, he goes into a battle, and while he was at battle at this town, he and all of his commanders were having a party, which I do not understand why they would be having a party when you're supposed to be getting ready to go out on the battlefield. But they were having a party and they got very, very drunk. And Baasha, Baasha, I think I'm pronouncing that correctly, Baasha, he is not related to the tribe of David at all. And he is not related to Jeroboam at all. And he is one of the captains. Some people say he was a commander, but most of the books say he was a captain, which would have made him a low-ranking officer. And he walked into the tent where they were partying, and he assassinated King Asa and declared himself king.
So
Yes.
Baasha did not kill Asa.
No, not Asa. Did I say Asa? No, he killed Nabab. Nabad. I'm sorry, got the wrong king. There's so many of them. Anyway, so he kills Nabab. And now this, if you notice verse 25, it said that Nabab ruled for 2 years. But in fact, he only ruled about 18 months. And that's why people have said that there's a contradiction here, because up here it says that he, in the second year of King Asa's reign, he became king of Israel. And then down on verse 28, it said that in the third year of King Asa's reign, Baasha became king. So it sounds like there's a contradiction, but remember how the Israelites count things. Yes, Paul.
Yeah, do I have it right that Nadab, did I say that right? It was a son of Jeroboam.
Yes, he was a son of Jeroboam. And if you remember correctly, Jeroboam was a very, very bad king. And he did a whole bunch of horrible things, including bringing idol worship into the kingdom of Israel, which is the northern kingdom. And so God had told him that his entire family would be wiped out, and that the reign of Israel would no longer be in his family. Well, Baasha basically does that. He fulfills that prophecy by killing Nadab. And then, as we saw in verse 29, he immediately slaughtered all of the descendants of King Jeroboam. Now, my translation I'm looking at today says all the descendants. In the translation I was reading yesterday, which happened to be a different translation, it says all the male descendants. I don't know which translation you have, but in any way, if you killed off all the males, obviously the family line is not going to continue without any males. And then it says in verse 28 that Baasha became the next king. However, if we go down, or maybe it's in 16, we'll see that there becomes a split in the kingdom of Israel because there is a general who decides Baasha does not deserve to be king, and he declares himself king. And so for 6 years, there is 2 kings in Israel. There is King Baasha, and there is King Onan, or something like that. Onan. And so anyway, so that's how that sort of goes out. Then what happens is once King Baasha, Onan dies, which allows King Baasha to step in and become king of the entire territory. And the first thing he does is he goes and he fortifies the border towns of Ramah, R-A-M-A-H, Ramah, however you pronounce that. Why can't they call their names like Portland or something? You know? But anyway, he fortifies the town to restrict the movement of King Asa. And Asa, in the past, has always, whenever there was any battle he had to go to, Asa, immediately would go to the Lord and call upon the Lord through the prophets and so forth to give him advice. Either because he felt that Baasha would be easy to defeat, but he doesn't do this. This is, as I said, he starts making mistakes. And this is one of the mistakes he makes. And instead, he turns around. Now, up until this point, he's been having a lot of victories. And I'm back to talking about Asa. He's been having a lot of victories over the Gentile communities that surround him. And he's been having a lot of victories. And when he had a victory, he was getting plunder. And he was taking that plunder and he was putting it in the temple. He was declaring that the plunder belonged to God. So all the silver and gold that he was collecting from these victories, he was slowly starting to replenish everything that was lost by Rehoboam. And during when Egypt came across and attacked them, we talked about that last week or 2 weeks ago. So anyway, he started to rebuild the treasuries of the temple. Well, he goes into the temple and he empties all of the treasuries, takes all the gold and all the silver, and he takes it over to Ben-Hadad, H-A-D-A-D. And we want to remember that name because of this one act. He ends up really hurting both the tribe of Judah and also the northern kingdom. He ends up hurting both of them very, very badly. So he goes to Ben-Hadad and he makes an alliance with him. Now, if we look at Ben-Hadad, he is the king of Syria, Syria. I think I'm pronouncing that right. Which back then had a different name. If you look at the name, you'll see that that is one of the names that God commanded Joshua to never make a treaty with. And so Asa, mistake number 2, is he's making treaty with a country that God has told him never to make a treaty with. And that's why that's going to turn around and bite both kingdoms, the kingdom of the north and the kingdom of the south. And anyway, so the treaty he has is he gets Ben-Hadad, which at the time he was just a small, little, tiny king. And he gets him to attack from the north, forcing Baasha to withdraw his troops that he has at the southern end of the northern kingdom. And they have to now go and protect their northern borders. And the moment they do that, then Asa goes into those towns and reconquers those towns and declares them for his kingdom. So, did you say something, Laura?
I was helping ask Asa to explain them for Judah.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so that Syrian alliance was not a good move. And that was sort of strike 2 for King Asa. And anyway, so then we see here, I need someone to read 32 through 34, just 3 verses there, and we will be done with 15.
There was constant war between King Asa of Judah and King Baasha of Israel. Baasha, son of Ahijah, began to rule over all Israel in the 3rd year of King Asa's reign in Judah. Baasha reigned in Tirzah 24 years, but he did what the people in the Lord's sight and followed the example of Jeroboam, continuing the sins that Jeroboam had led Israel to commit.
Okay.
I made your point last week when you not only said King Jeroboam and the following kings were evil, but they had led the people into the same evilness. I hadn't seen that before, so I appreciated pointing out not only were they bad, but they led the people into.
Yes, they led the people, and that was a very, very bad thing. Now, chapter 16, which starts at question number 10, it says, "What message does the prophet Jeru give to Baasha?" And you will find the answer in verses 1 through 4.
I didn't make the transition with you. Where are you?
I'm at question number 10 on your sheet, chapter 16.
Are we not going to do 9?
I thought we'd already sort of answered that, but we can talk about 9. Who is this Baasha character who becomes the king of Israel for 24 years? So didn't I answer that already?
I guess you did.
Yeah, he he's a low-ranking officer in the king, and he happened to be working with Naboth, is that his name? He was working under that king, and when they all got drunk, he walked in and assassinated them all, and then assassinated the remainder of all the male descendants of Jeroboam. So he's a mean character.
Mhm.
And he obviously doesn't know how to keep his word. So this prophet, Jehu, Jehu, shows up and he goes directly to Baasha, and he gives a message to Baasha. What is that message? It's so important.
The Lord said that you have made my people of Israel sin, provoking me to anger. Everyone in the city will be eaten up by the dogs and the birds in the field.
Okay, so the Lord sends a message to Baasha that, number one, you have provoked my anger. I am very angry at you. Now, anytime that God tells you that he's angry with you, I just implore you, fall on your face and start begging for forgiveness. Baasha does not. But he tells them that you have provoked my anger, and so I'm going to destroy you and all of your family. If any of your descendants should die while they lived in the city, they will be eaten by the dogs. In other words, they will not get buried. And if they should die out in the fields or out in the countryside, then they will be eaten by the vultures. Neither way sounds like a great way to have your body be disposed of. But anyway, Baasha gets very, very mad at this prophet, and he imprisons the prophet. Begin to realize that prophets during this period of time seem to get thrown in prison a lot. Sometimes we hear about them again, and we will hear about Jehu again. So apparently he gets out of prison, but First Kings nor does Chronicles tell us how he gets out of prison. But we also see that in the last few years of Asa's life, and this is a rabbit trail, but it's important for us to know this, Asa gets mad at a prophet that comes and gives him a warning, and he has that prophet thrown in jail. And we never hear of that prophet again. So sometimes we hear him again, and other times we don't. And there's a perfect example of when we do. So the rest of the events of Baasha's reign, we find a lot more details in that book called History of the Kings of Israel. So I said, if you ever want to go online, you can look at it. And if you belong to any library that allows you to do online, you can actually download the book on your computer and read it. And you don't have to go check it out or pay for it, because it's not a cheap book to buy. It's like $90-something. And I said, no, thank you to that, especially since I could download it and read it on my computer and so forth. But it is a good history book, and it is basically that. It's not a spiritual book at all. It is only historical, and it never tells us what God said or did. It only tells us what the kings did. So it does tell us a lot of details about Baasha. As I said, he was a very mean king. He never kept his word unless it served his own purposes and so forth. Then verse 7 here says, the message from the Lord against Baasha and his family came through the prophet Jeru, and it was delivered because Baasha had done what was evil in the Lord's sight, just like Jehoram had done, and because Baasha had destroyed the family of Jehoram. And I thought, wait a minute, God had said he was going to do that. So that part of the sentence didn't make a lot of sense to me. And the Lord's anger was provoked by Baasha's sin. So now, after Baasha dies, you're noticing that Israel is going through a lot of kings. And Baasha is probably the one that ruled the longest. But now we have one called Elah, E-L-A-H. And he's Baasha's son. And he began to rule in the 26th year of King Asa. And he reigned for 2 years. And again, he really only reigned about a year and a half. And then Zimri, who commanded half of the royal chariots, made plans to kill him. And Elah was getting drunk again. What's this with all these kings getting drunk? Anyway, he's getting drunk while he's at the home of Arza, A-R-Z-A, and he was the supervisor of the palace. So he had gone over to Arza's house, and they were having a party. Many commentators believe that Arza was in cahoots with Zimri. But again, the Bible doesn't tell us that. It just seems awfully interesting that Zimri was able to walk into Arza's house and kill Elah and walk out. And he also kills the remainder of Baasha's living relatives. And it says in verse 11 that he even destroyed distant relatives and friends. So he was killing everybody. He went on a killing spree. So again, we have two men who decide that they're going to rule Israel. And so Zimri begins to rule, but his reign only lasted 7 years. 7 days, excuse me. And I thought that was interesting. So when the army heard that he had committed treason by killing the king, another commander, again by the name of O-M-R-I, Omri, he turns around and leads an attack against the town of Zerah. And what does Zimri do? Zimri goes into the palace and he sets the palace on fire with him in it. He chose to die by fire rather than being killed by the commander of the army. So He was only king for 7 days. He probably is the king that had the shortest reign. So then that commander, Omri, I'm trying to figure out how to pronounce some of these names. Again, I agree with your friend. They should have given him much easier names to pronounce.
You want to call him King O?
Yeah, we'll call him King O. And again, we have another, this time it's a civil war between King O and King T. And so half the people follow King O and half the people follow King T. And they have a civil war, and the followers of King O defeat the followers of King T, and King T dies in battle. So King O now becomes king over the entire territory.
Still only the northern half.
Huh?
King O is, although he's united his territory, it's still only the northern half.
Yes.
Israel's still divided.
Yeah, Israel is still divided between the north and the south, but the north actually had its own civil war. The south did not get involved in it. And it was between King O and King T. And I thank you. I like that initials. I may do that with the remaining kings also. Because anyway, so, but King O was just as bad as Jeroboam. And it's really sort of comical, is that the right word? To me, that all the kings on the Israel side are rated against Jeroboam. You know, you'll see constantly them saying that, King O did what was evil in the Lord's sight, just like Jeroboam, son of Nebat. And maybe they just like to write that sentence out. But they constantly keep saying that. And so then it says that the people provoked the anger of the Lord, the God of Israel, with their worthless idols. So we see that constantly happening. Come on. So now I need someone. Where did I go? Come on, where did King O go? Okay, I'm down to verse 23. And so I think I answered 12. And I think I answered the why there was a civil war. Because you had the two commanders that both wanted to be king. And then what Zimri did.
When King O ascended to the throne, he basically didn't have a palace because it was all burnt down.
That's right. He lived in a tent. He lived in a tent. And many commentators called him the nomad king because whenever he felt that he was being attacked and that they were going to capture his stronghold, he just took the tent down and moved. So maybe that was a good military scheme. I'm not sure. But King O comes out on top, and he becomes a new king. But he does something different, and he reigned 12 years, and 6 of them were in Tizar, And then the remaining 6, it was in Samaria. Yes,
Bill, the
Bill.
I got a question. I read somewhere that King O, his family held the Northern Kingdom for 100 years.
I know his family held it for a minimum of 50.
That's when the Syrians came in and they took Samaria.
Yeah,
At that time, it was still called O.
yeah. I'm going to check on that, Bill. I know that he and his family had it for a minimum of 50 years, but let me check on because Ahab, which we're going to be talking about Ahab for 4 chapters. First Kings really like talking about Ahab. Of course, the real reason is because Prophet Elisha and Elijah are introduced, and I think they really like talking about Elijah and Elisha, which happened to be during Ahab's reign. And Ahab reigned for about 40 years. And King O reigned for 12. So that's 52 years right there. But let me check on that, Bill, because I don't remember. And I will check on that. It'll be something for me to check on. And I'll have that answer for you in 2 weeks. Okay, or maybe I'll just email it to you. Okay, so after 6 years of living in Tizar, he buys a hill from Shemer, Shemer, for 150 pounds of silver. He bought the entire hill. And that hill, today, we know that hill as Samaria. The entire town of Samaria is on top of that hill. Yes, Jeanette.
It is 150 to 2. Yes, mine says 2 talents. So 2 talents, 150.
Yes. Yeah. 75 pounds of silver was 1 talent. So you didn't want to carry 1 talent in your pocket. Definitely didn't want to carry 2.
Thank you.
So anyway, so he buys this hill, and at the time it was a grove for grapes and olives. So Amar buys the hill, and he builds a city and calls the city Samaria in honor of Mr. Shemer. And I don't know what Samaria and Shemer, there must have been a meaning or something, but I wasn't able to find anything in my Hebrew books that explained that to me. But calling this town Samaria was to honor the man he bought it from. And one of the very first things he does is, I asked you in question number 14, what does he build?
He builds a strategic citadel.
Okay.
Because location is a very defensible area.
That's right. It was a great defensive hill to be on top of, because the view all the way around gave you a great defensive view. But he built this citadel, and inside the citadel was what?
a temple.
That's right, a temple. And it was a temple that he convinced the people of the northern tribes to come and worship Baal. It's the introduction of Baal to the entire northern tribe, which really is the biggest reason why the Bible says that he invoked the anger of the Lord. Yes.
In Jesus' time, the Jews hated Samaria because what I was taught was the people were half Jewish and half Gentile. They were a mixed people. But this is a new piece of information to me, and I'm wondering if Samaria just started off bad to begin with during a divided kingdom. It was set up for Baal worship, and the hatred goes way back to its beginning, not just the
Yes. It goes way back. Now, you have to remember that in about another 75 years, the armies of Assyria are going to conquer all of the northern and bring them all into captivity, and all those tribes are being taken away. And so Samaria gets stripped, completely stripped. The building is still there. But then when they get released and some of them come back, and then that's in another one of the prophet's books, Nehemiah talks about this. When they come back, some of them settle in Samaria. And those were primarily the ones that intermarried with the Gentiles in the area. And then they would use that temple there as their worship place, instead of going to Jerusalem to worship. But yes, you're right. This is the beginning of Samaria, and we can see that Samaria's always sort of had bad roots. Yes, Paul.
Yeah. At the time of Christ, and Christ was on the earth, did that temple still exist at that time? Or was it true God rather than Baal? Baal was in agreement. On the line. Did they ever get wised up in the fact that they?
During the time of Jesus, I do not believe there was any Baal worship in Samaria. But they were using the temple for worship. But what they were worshiping has never been clear to me, because the Jews said they were not worshiping God. But then the Jews didn't like Samaritans, so you really have to ask yourself, what were they worshiping? And I will put that on my homework and see if I can find out from one of the historians what they were worshiping. Okay. Now, 27 says that the rest of the events of King O's reign, the extent of his power and everything he did, are recorded in the books of the history of the kings of Israel. Then when King O died, he was buried in Samaria, and his son Ahab becomes the next king. And yes.
I got a question. It doesn't say much about it, but whatever happened to Jezebel and all the other queens, did they have a lot of authority or control over something?
Well, Jezebel we're now going to get introduced to Jezebel. And actually, we will find out what happens to Jezebel. So I won't want to be a spoiler alert. But normally the queens did not have a lot of power. I mean, the power they had was more of a advisory power to their husband. But also remember that these husbands, most of them had multiple wives. So how much they were listening to one over the other is very questionable. But however, we do know that Jezebel of all the early queens, had perhaps the most power. And we will see that she invoked more fear over the people than even King Ahab did. And King Ahab is not a nice man at all. So we do see that. Jeanette, you raised your hand.
How did she induce the fear?
I'm sorry, what?
How did she induce fear? Did she say, I will kill you if you're
Again, I don't want to be a spoiler, but we're going to see a lot of that in chapter 18. And basically, King Ahab goes from this part of 16. So he gets the last couple verses of 16, and he goes all the way until chapter 20. So there's a lot of chapters about King Ahab. So any other questions?
Rodney?
Yes.
I looked up about the Samaritans. And during the time of Jesus, the Samaritans worshiped Yahweh, the God of Israel. But their traditions were differently. They accepted only the first 5 books of Moses as the Holy Scripture. They rejected the rest of the Old Testament, the prophets and writings. They believed in one God, and they revered Moses as their only prophet. And they look forward to a future messianic figure known as the Tahab or something. So that's
Thank you.
answers your question on that.
Yes, you just saved me a homework assignment.
Okay.
Did that answer your question, Bill?
Yeah.
or Paul, whoever it was that asked that question. So we got that one taken care of. Thank you ever so much, Karen.
You're
So
welcome.
now we have Ahab. And verse 30 said, Ahab was evil in the Lord's sight, even more than any of the kings before him. That's the opening verse to introduce us to Ahab. So what they're saying is that up until Ahab, he was the worst of all the kings. And one of the translations says that he was not only the worst of all the kings, he was including those of the southern tribe also. So he was the worst of all. And then verse 31, who wants to read verse 31? I love verse 31. Karen, you want to read that? There you go.
Verse 31. And as though it were not enough to follow the sinful example of Jeroboam, he married Jezebel, the daughter of King Ethbaal of the Sidonians, and he began to bow down in worship of Baal.
Okay. So then King Ahab builds a temple and an altar for Baal in Samaria. So he's sort of following in his father's footsteps about worshiping Baal, but now he's building an altar also. And it was during his reign that Hahiel, a man from Bethel, rebuilt Jericho. And my last question is, what is verse 34 referring to? Okay, could someone open up their Bible to Joshua chapter 6?
George Chris.
We're doing a sword drill, so you can get there first. Okay, Lori, you got there first. So could you read verses 24 through 30 for me?
Then the Israelites burned the town and everything in it. Only the things made from silver, gold, or bronze, or iron were kept for the treasury of the Lord's house. So Joshua spared Rahab, the prostitute, and her relatives who were with her in the house, because she had hidden the spies Joshua sent to Jericho. And she lives among the Israelites to this day. At the time, Joshua invoked this curse. May the curse of the Lord fall on anyone who tries to rebuild the town of Jericho at the cost of his firstborn son. He will lay its foundation. At the cost of his youngest son, he will set up its gates. So the Lord was with Joshua, and his reputation spread throughout the land.
Okay, so all the way back to when the Israelites first came in to the promised land and they captured the town of Jericho. And we all know the story and the marching around the city gates and all that really great stuff. And when that battle was all over with and the Israelites had been ordered by God to destroy the entire town and everything in it except the silver and the gold, which they could put into the treasury. And so they did that. They obeyed God and they completely destroyed the town. And then Joshua places the curse of the Lord on that location. And basically what he says is that anyone that tries to rebuild this town, their oldest son will die in the foundation, and their youngest son will die with the gates that are put on the city. I mean, that's pretty blatant. Well, obviously, Hiel, or whatever, however you pronounce this, Hiel, decides that the warnings of Joshua and the Lord are not true. And so when he laid the foundation, his oldest son, Abram, Abiram, dies. He actually gets shot through the heart by an arrow. Who shot him? No one tells us, but he gets shot. And he literally falls into the foundation, and the stones are laid on top of him. So the foundation literally becomes his tomb. But they, again, completely ignore the warning of God and of Joshua, and he continued to rebuild this area. And when the gates are finally being put together, and they're putting that big thing that goes over the top of the gate. I can't remember the name of it, but that big stone that goes over the top, and they're installing that, and the workers accidentally let go of it, and it comes down and it lands on his youngest son, Segub, Subgrub, something like that. We'll call him A and S. And so we're seeing the fulfillment of a prophecy from literally hundreds of years earlier. And, and the closing verse of this chapter says, this all happened according to the message from the Lord concerning Jericho, spoken by Joshua, son of Nun. And we find that city, the new completed city, because the man did complete it, but it burns down like 2 years later. So obviously God did not want that city rebuilt. So any questions about the rest of 15 or 16.
And I have one more question.
Okay?
During the time of Christ, there was a town named Jericho.
Yes, it's a different,
Same town and the same location, or was it a different location? But the same?
it's the same name, but an entirely different location. So it's, if I remember correctly, was like 5 miles away from this location. So it was still in the same area, but about 5 miles away. So yes, Jericho existed, but not the same location.
It really did. Of course, I've never been able to rebuild it in the same location.
Yeah. So any other questions about 15 or 16? You will notice that we've covered a lot of kings. And now that Ahab is in charge, and we are going to move into, yes, Bill.
Have they ever found any written notes or anything about that Chronicles of the King?
The Chronicles are in the Bible.
No, the Chronicles of the King that were, notes that were written. They mentioned it a couple times.
Yes, they have found the one I told you about, the history of the northern kings, the kings of Israel. They have found that one, and it's available. You can go online and get a copy of it. The Chronicles of the Kings, not the First and Second Chronicles that you and I know of, but the Chronicles of the Kings, to my knowledge, unless it's been found in the last 5 or 6 years, is still missing. Which would be an interesting read.
Yeah.
Any other questions? We do know that the Chronicles of the Kings did exist because Josephus, the historian that I keep talking about every now and then, he refers to them when he references some of his research. So he did apparently get to see them. But what happened to them after his era, because I think he was, about 100 AD? So what happened to his writing, to the book after that is beyond me. So, anything else? Well, then I'm going to turn the recording.